Strafe. Is it worth a buy? Let's read the words of the developer. Then I'll tell you what I think. Strafe is the fastest, bloodiest, deadliest, most adjective-abusing, action-packed first-person shooter of 1996, featuring breathtaking photorealistic graphics and persistent gore that allows you to paint levels red with the excess of entrails of your enemies. There's more, guys. Strafe is a roguelike first-person shooter pushing the limits of computer-generated photorealism and hardcore science fiction action into unimaginable territory. With virtually no load times and infinite replayability, just choose your gun and be instantly blown away by face-melting speed, permanent damage and gibs, endless changing levels. Yeah. Strafe also includes 4 unique zones, 3 levels each, that demand different death-defying gameplay styles, gun upgrades that turn your average tool of death into an outright holocaust machine, 30 insane weapons and 20 bloodthirsty enemies, and the sickest soundtrack of 1996, and at least the next 25 years. So what is Strafe? Well, it's supposed to be a shooter from 1996 with a bit of roguelite in it, which basically means that there's no save game function whatsoever. When you die, you start the game from the beginning. Now, that's a good idea in a shooter, I think. I mean, a lot of people think it isn't. I think it is, provided you balance the shooter out properly. But first, I want to just talk about the 1996 kind of claim. Yes, it looks like a 1996 shooter, but my goodness, it does not play like a 1996 shooter. You see, one of the things that made shooters so good back in the 90s was the guns were brilliant. They were really meaty guns. Not only did they sound good, but they felt good. When you fired the gun, it would give a target. Now that means like smash them to pieces and blood and guts everywhere. This game does that, but it still manages to make your weapon feel like you're firing a fucking Nerf gun from Toys R Us. It's just not meaty. The gunplay again, and how many times am I saying this in game reviews, the gunplay again is just awful. It doesn't feel like a meaty gun. I mean, go back to Doom, the very first Doom, you know, the one after Wolfenstein 3D, and you take the nail gun from that, it was just insanely good. The shotgun, it just had that crunch to it, and you know, that stopping power. In this, you just don't feel like the guns have got any power whatsoever. I mean, you hardly even know you fire. If it wasn't for the animation of a gun, you wouldn't know you were actually firing a gun, and that's bad for a 90s shooter. And the way this game plays is you only have one gun pretty much the entire game. You get a choice of 3 at the beginning and choose one of them. You either have a shotgun, a railgun, or a machine gun. Now, it doesn't matter which one you choose, that's your base gun throughout the entire game. There are random weapons scattered around the arena and the maps that you go through, but they only have a small amount of ammo in, and you cannot replenish their ammo at all. If you find a sort of a plasma gun with, I don't know, 20 rounds in, you fire your 20 rounds, you throw the gun away. I mean, what the fuck? One of the things that made Quake and Doom so bloody good in the 90s was the arsenal that you had. You had this huge array of weaponry, a weapon for every occasion. You had the quick firing nail gun, the blunderbuss shotgun, you had the double shotgun, you had a plasma gun, you had the BFG, the big fucking gun, you know, and you had all these different things, and you just don't in this. You just don't have that in this. You're just firing the same old gun over and over again. And do you know what makes it even worse? They've put a reload mechanic in, again, something that we didn't have in the 90s. In fact, in Doom, the only gun that you would reload was the super shotgun, and that reloaded so fast that you hardly even noticed that it was reloading. In this, you have like a 1.5 second animation as you reload, and the clip sizes are so small that you're forever going click, click, shit, no bullets, and what the fuck? Totally defeats the object of a 90s shooter. A 90s shooter was all about you charging at the enemies. In this, you're running away from the fuckers. It's like you're playing a Frenchman. The only 90s game I can think of where you played like this was Serious Sam. You'd be running away from the sheer amount of enemies, and it just happens that these are the same people that made Serious Sam. But in Doom, the only monsters I could ever think of me running away from was the charging little pigs. And that was just because I was shotgunning them in the face, but most of the time I was onto them. I was running in circles straight. In fact, you did more strafing in Doom than you do in Strafe. And another thing, and there's more, guys, there's more. The levels are procedurally generated. Now, this causes problems. I don't have any footage of this because I wasn't recording every instant that I did, but there was a few times where I'd find myself in a no-win situation. You go down a lift, and at the bottom of the lift there's like 5 or 6 monsters mob you. You can't shoot them all, you die. And the levels are boring because it's kind of like the same rooms just in a random order all the time, and that is again anti-90s shooter. One of the things that made Doom so good was the level design. You would have different monsters on specific levels in specific places that suited their abilities to the actual level. You'd put some on pedestals that was shooting the player, so the player would be forced to do some kind of ranged shot on them. Then you'd have other areas that were claustrophobic, and you'd rush a lot of enemies out of a hidden passageway and things like that. And you can only do that when you take the time to handcraft levels. I used to make levels for Doom using Dewey. I think it was DEU it was called. And I remember just setting traps all over the place for the player to come through, just taking real care of putting some of you might have even played my levels because I sent them into Zap. I was a PC Zone it was, not Zap. Zap's going back even further. That was me Commodore 64 magazine. I sent them into PC Zone, and they got published with a lot of other people's levels on a floppy disk, and they were great levels. I remember upgrading my PC by another 0.5 meg of RAM just so I could put more imps in the fucking levels, and I paid £60 for 0.5 meg of RAM, guys. Can you believe? Or was it a 1 meg of RAM? Probably 1 meg of RAM. I probably took it from 1 meg to 2 meg, you know, doubling its memory size to 2 meg. Another big problem it has is you are constantly running out of health and armor, and you can't really replenish it. There's these machines around the level where you can buy extra ammo, extra armor, and things like that, and you use the currency that you pick up after killing enemies. You pick up the stuff, it's called salvage, I think, because you're a scavenger, and you pick this up and then you take it to one of these machines and then you buy extra armor. The only way you can do that is if you're as rich as Rockefeller, because the prices are ridiculous. You'll be lucky if you can buy 20 armor in the entire level. It's bullshit, absolute bullshit, and that's the problem. That the game is hard but boring. I don't mind a roguelike. In fact, I kind of like the whole idea of a roguelike, but there is no progression in this. See, when I did Immortal Redneck, I thumbed that down because the gunplay was awful, but the game concept was brilliant. You gathered a whole load of money each level, you bought advancements of your skills and abilities through perks, and then the next time when you died and went back into the dungeon, you kept all the perks that you had, so you were more powerful the next time you go in. With this, once you go back in, you're just starting from scratch again with no advantage whatsoever, and you're doing the same thing over and over again, albeit with different looking levels because it's procedurally generated, but it's the same old shit over and over again. And the problem with that is the same old shit had better be bloody good fun, and it just isn't, because of the stupid reloading, which has got about a 1.5 second reload mechanic. Why have you got reloading? I mean, I know I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again. Why is reloading in? That was never a 90s thing. I'm so used to just picking up a gun and just running with it until it runs out of ammo, you know. And the whole fact that you're playing in reverse all the time, you're running away more than you're doing anything else from the monsters. It's just not a fun game, and it doesn't capture, for me, what the 90s was all about. The 90s was about aggressive, leaping over monsters' heads, rocket jumping them in the face as you go past them, you know, rocket doing a reverse rocket jump, switching to railgun, bam, shooting in his eyelash, you know, stuff like that. It was about getting a super nail gun and charging at the mobs and running around them, circle strafing them, and all the rest of it. You don't do that in this. You spend all your... In fact, do you know something? In order for me to progress through this game, I had to revert to the tactics of playing it like Rainbow Six, just like pulling mobs one at a time or two at a time and shooting them in the head as they were coming towards me and gingerly making my way through the levels. That's the only way I can actually get far in this game, and that's not fun at all. That's certainly not a 90s shooter. Thankfully, there's another game mode. There's a couple of new game modes in this. There's not just the main game mode. There's a one that I particularly liked called Murderer or something, where you go into a level. It's basically you have to fend off waves of enemies on one map, and that was fun, just running around the place just going mental with a gun. In fact, that is way more fun than the actual main game, but At £15, that is not enough to carry this over the line. It just isn't. It's a great idea. It's a great idea, and it looks good as well. But it just fails miserably on the execution, specifically in the area of the weapons and the gunplay. And unfortunately, that is the main core aspect of the game. Whether you play it for an hour or 25 hours, it ain't going to alter the core aspect if it's shit. And the core aspect of this game is shit.